Hey, have you ever been asked to tell a story and then your mind goes completely blank? I mean, crickets, nothing comes to mind. Only for a little bit later, you're driving in your car, you're laying down in your bed, you're taking a shower, and then all of a sudden the perfect story comes to mind and you think, why didn't I think of that? Listen, you don't have a memory problem. What you have is a system problem. You see, stories are like wet, slippery fish. If you don't have a system to be able to capture those stories and easily retrieve them, they will always slip and get away from you. My name's Andy Enriquez. I'm a business storytelling coach, and over the past decade, I've worked with thousands of entrepreneurs, speakers, and coaches, showing them how to be able to craft powerful, compelling stories that both connect and convert. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to use the story library system so that the next time you need a powerful, compelling story, it's going to be so easy for you to go ahead and retrieve it. Let me break down for you exactly how the story library system works. We're going to start off with three very simple columns. And this is going to be your database. This is going to be your reservoir. Anytime you need a story, you'll be able to easily retrieve it. Now, you can decide whether you're going to write this down in a notepad, you're going to go ahead and create an Excel spreadsheet. It doesn't matter. The most important thing is that you're developing this library system. Now, in this library system, the first column is super critical and super important because the first column is going to be the way that you retrieve. It is going to be your retrievement mechanism. You need an easy way to be able to retrieve and recall the stories that you need to share. And part of the reasons why we find ourselves going blank is because we don't have a simple process to be able to retrieve the stories that we want to share. So in that first column, it's super critical. Here's what column number one is. Column number one is what I refer to as the story title. This is you simply thinking and sitting down for a moment and start going through some of your best stories. I want you to start thinking of those magical stories, and I want to give you a pointer on how you could come up with some of your best stories. Think about your first, right? First car, first date, first moment. The other way that you can think of those magical stories, think about maybe three people who are well connected to you, maybe a best friend, maybe a spouse. And once you write that person's name down, think of all the stories connected to that individual. There's all kind of ways for you to start retrieving some of your best stories. Now, as those stories come to mind, you're going to have all these random thoughts, but now you need to come up with a naming system. This is where we put the story title. This is simply the name that you're going to give the story that makes it easy for you to be able to recall the story. So when I'm teaching and I'm training and I'm on stage, there's a story that I love to share where I could talk to people about the importance of storytelling. And so how do I actually demonstrate that? I tell them the story about my first car. So guess what? In my story library, under story title, the name is First Car. Really simple. Doesn't need to make sense to you or anybody else, just needs to make sense to me. In other words, when you're building out your story library system, your title just needs to make sense to you. So whatever it was, whether it's the first date, the car crash, the bankruptcy, the foreclosure, the weight loss, the hospital visit, it doesn't matter. The name simply needs to make sense to you so that it is easy for you to go ahead and be able to pull it back and retrieve it whenever you need it. Now, once you actually have the story title, the next thing that we need is we need some type of a short description, right? Because the thing is, the last thing you want is to remember the story, the title, and not really recall what the story was about. So we got to come up with a short description. So let's go back to my example. When I think about my story about my first car, the short description I have is, you know what? When I wanted to get my first car, I went ahead and I got a job at the local grocery store because my mom said there's no way that I could drive the car until I could pay for the insurance myself. So these are just little points that I put. I put Public Supermarket. It's the supermarket I was working at. The store manager was Mr. Olson. I put Mr. Olson. And then I mentioned right there, had to tell my story to convince Mr. Olson. These are simply bullet points, so it makes it easy for you to remember the details and the important things that are inside of the story. Once again, don't get carried away. Don't try to write the entire story down. All you're going to do is you're going to put a simple story title so that it's easy for you to retrieve, and then you're going to make sure that you have a couple of bullet points so that you can remember what is this story about. Now, the third part of the story library system is super important. And that third part is you got to be thinking about what is the main point that you are looking to make in the story. Well, you might be saying, Andy, why is that so important? The reason why it's important is because the whole reason why you're taking the time to share and tell a story is because you intend to make a point. You see, one of the legendary greats, this gentleman by the name of Les Brown, one of the top 5 speakers in the world, Hall of Fame speaker with the National Speaker Association, there's something that he shared with me years ago when he was coaching me, and here's what he said. He said, young man, never make a point without telling a story, and never tell a story without making a point. So in other words, what he was saying is, there's no reason why you should be telling a story if you don't intend to make a point. So right here in your story library system, this is where you start thinking about what is the point of you sharing and telling the story. So when I share my story about getting my very first car, the whole reason why I share that story is I talk about how I was trying to influence the store manager at the local grocery store to hire me. And every single time I kept going in to check on my application, he kept telling me, Andy, come back. Andy, come back. But it wasn't until the moment that I told him the story, how my mom had just bought me a car and the car was sitting in my driveway, but my mom wouldn't let me drive the car until I got a job and I could pay for the insurance. And basically, I needed Mr. Olson to understand, you are the only thing that's standing in between me driving this car to school and showing it to all of my friends, right? But me telling the story to Mr. Olson is what finally convinced him to hire me on the spot. You see, the whole reason why I share that story, when I do share it in long form, is to get people to understand that telling a story has the ability to be able to influence people, and telling a story can go from you hearing a no to hearing a yes. So all I do in my story library system is write down the point that I'm looking to make in the story. Now, in case you're wondering how all of this comes along, I want to show you an example of a partially completed story library system. So go ahead and check this out. So I took the time to go ahead and fill this out with some of the stories that I have in my story library. If you notice here, right here, the story titles, I've got simple titles that simply make sense to me. First car story, green couch story, the tea story. You might be thinking, Andy, what in the world is the tea story? What's the green couch story? But listen, it doesn't need to make sense to you, just needs to make sense to me because that's my story library. Same thing applies when you're building your story library. The titles just need to make sense to you so that you can easily be able to retrieve the stories that you want to share. Number 2, the second column is this, that short description, right? And this is where I'm going to just write the short description, bullet points, getting my Publix job, the green couch, NFL story, right? The tea story, grandma's tea. Grandma used to give some really nasty tea. There's a whole story there. We're not going down there, but I just need to simply be able to recall it. And then finally, the main point. What are the main points that I want to make when I share and tell the story, right? When I make the main point, when I tell that first car story, I'm just simply trying to get people to understand the power of story. When I go ahead and tell the NFL story, I'm trying to talk to them about the importance of having a powerful, compelling why. Listen, most of this won't make sense to you unless you heard me share the entire story. But the thing that I need you to understand, the next time you're getting ready to be interviewed on a podcast, you're filming some content, you're speaking to somebody one-on-one, you're on stage, you're speaking to somebody, a large group of people, and you're trying to figure out what's a great story that I could share to be able to connect so that you can make sure you don't go blank again. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to start building your story library system. Really, really simple. We got a story title, a short description, and a main point. Listen, if you got value from this video, do me a favor. First and foremost, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And not only that, turn on your notification because I got many other great videos that are coming your way. And by the way, if you've been trying to figure out when you are going to share and craft your story, you've been trying to figure out what's the best story for you to share, depending on the scenario, I got a great video that's going to show you exactly how to choose the right story for the perfect scenario. Click that link below and check out the next video, and I'll see you there.